form. How are you?
I excited to be in the crazy ant farm. I'm good.
Well, we are excited to have you. You were in one of our favorite movies of the year, hands down. We both loved it, and everybody we know loved it. So I can't wait to talk to you about that because,
Yay.
as an older guy, I've been around for most of Saturday Night Live. So I'm curious your thoughts on it, what it was like working on a project like that. So we're gonna definitely dive deep into that. But what we kind of like to do is just to get started is kind of do a little bit of a background on you for anybody who might not be familiar with you. And so I'm always curious, especially when the resume is stacked, writer, actor, producer, director, comedian. I'm like, how did you get into it all to begin with? And did you know early on that's what you wanted to do, or how'd you get started?
Yeah, wow, that's it's a big question, but yeah, I mean, I wasn't one of those people who was like I always knew I wanted to be an actor. I was like really I had no idea. I always liked it. I liked doing it in school. It never even occurred to me that it could possibly be like an actual job,
Right?
um, or like my way of life while I was in school. So I just like, I don't know. And I was also really shy as a kid. And so it just never occurred to me until, sorry, I have a cat.
Oh, you're
She's,
good. we're
um,
pet friendly. Don't worry.
uh, she might chime in at some points over here. Um, but yeah, I was never the kid who was like, I always knew I wanted to be an actor, and it wasn't until college that my mom actually kind of pushed me to was like, oh, this university called New York University, which I mean I had heard of, but I didn't know anything about the program. I didn't go to like an artsy school. I didn't like that. I was kind of very sheltered in that way. I was not knowledgeable about like the art world at all. My mom pushed me to audition for the program. I got in, and it was the only one that I auditioned for. And I was like, I mean, this feels right to me. This feels
Yeah.
good. So I went with it, and now I'm still here. And I guess, I mean, how I ended up with all the other hyphens that I have is just they don't really tell you about how to navigate like the business as an actor. They tell
Yes.
you all the fun stuff, which is like when you have the job, but they don't really teach you like how to get the job, or at least not in the studio that I was in. And so after the first year, first summer out of college, I didn't immediately get my big break. Um, I started taking like improv classes and doing stand up here and there, and I just as a way to like perform,
Yeah.
just to like get the outlet, and I ended up really really loving it, and kind of also pursuing that as a career a little bit, kind of, but mainly I guess like I failed as an actor, and that's how I became a comedian. And I feel like that's how lots of comedians get their start, is they fail doing something else,
Yeah.
and they just kind of fall into it, and that's what happened to me. Um, yeah,
And then
but
isn't that interesting though how you term it as failing as an actor, so becoming a comedian, but then seeing some success as a comedian rebounds to the acting, which is always
yeah,
right. Like that's interesting to me. It's like, so it wasn't really a failure. It was just a step to the side for a second
it was
and
a
then kind of come
sidestep.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it was like I think it was it's a performance art,
Oh,
I guess.
absolutely.
So yeah, it,
Absolutely.
it was just like it was a way for me to just like get out there,
Oh,
and I got out there. What can I say?
no, that yeah. Well, a couple of things there too that I want to ask you about because a couple of things stuck out to me there. First, you said you were really shy when you were young. So on stage, I mean, doing comedy is one of the hardest things to ever conceive doing anyway, even for people who are not shy. So,
Mm,
and acting can be like, the audition process. It's changed a lot now because we're, thanks to
yeah.
COVID, we're in the world of Zoom or self tapes, and everything is done like we're doing right now, as opposed to the cattle calls walking into the room, right? but it's still kind of a process and a little nerve. So how did you deal with that? Being shy, was there a moment where you kind of just came out of your comfort zone and said, I'm just going to do it? Or did you experience a little bit of stage fright at first?
I mean, I still kind of experience stage fright to a degree. Definitely not nearly as much as I used to, but like I feel like a lot of actors were this way. Like it's a lot of actors I think are shy socially, like as themselves, but it's like they can kind of find different aspects of themselves
Yeah.
as, as someone else. And I think that's what I liked about it is that I was bullied a lot as a kid and I was like I just didn't want to be myself, for like 90 minutes. Like that would be great. Like if I could do a play and everyone has to be my friend because that's their lines, like that was like what was really appealing to me and I had like a very rich inner life,
Yeah.
obviously. When I was alone at home in my room, I was like the funniest, most interesting person ever to myself. But at school, I couldn't be that, or in real life, I couldn't be that unless I was like on stage and there was, something for me to be doing.
Right, right.
And I definitely really loved it and I did it a lot through school, but again, didn't see it as a job until I got into college for it. And yeah, so I don't know. I think like now that I've done stuff like improv and I'm in front of people all the time, I don't really get as much stage fright anymore. In fact, I get more stage fright if I have lines that I need to have memorized and like there's something that like I'm supposed to do. Whereas like if I'm just doing improv or
Yeah.
something and I come on stage, I'm like, I know about as much about what's about to happen as you do.
Right,
So
right.
uh I don't know, I don't really feel any nerves about doing improv.
I I
By
love
any
that because I think a
yeah.
lot of people think improv is I,
It would
and
feel the
rightfully so.
exact
Maybe it is for
opposite.
some people, right? But I think a lot of people are terrified of improv. But I like the kind of idea of just going off the cuff, just reacting, right? As opposed to like you said, oh, this is I got to remember this, or I got to hit this,
Yeah.
or I got to do that. So I like that. And yeah, so that's I really do like that approach and like because you do get to kind of discover yourself, if you will, because you can play like,
Mhm.
ooh, what's it like to be a bad guy? What's it like to be this person or that person? And you're really,
Yeah.
especially if you're starting young, you can kind of find out who you really are by playing these characters. I love that you
Yeah, by
said that.
pretending to be other people. Yeah,
Exactly, and you
absolutely.
find your own identity. And then the other thing
Yeah.
that you brought up early was not, and I agree wholeheartedly, is that they don't teach the business part of show business. And I think
Yeah.
that's where a lot of people breaking in get in trouble.
Yeah.
Because they don't have a clue. And then that makes them susceptible to people coming in and taking advantage. And so yeah, I think that, and it's one of the reasons why Logan and I do this podcast. It's for the people trying to break into the industry, and we want to try to inform people about, hey, this is kind of how it works, and if you're thinking
Yeah.
about it, this is the gig, and you got to remember this and you got to remember that. And especially acting, we had a guest on, and he was great. He likened it to, we don't like to use the word rejection, we say selection, but he
Yeah.
likened it to the auditioning is the job. When you get the gig, that's like the perk. But he said to not get defeated, he views it as, hey, I know that I am a Porsche, and I am a great Porsche. It's just
Uh-huh.
that day they were looking for a Maserati. But one day
Yeah.
they're going to look for a Porsche and I'm going to be that car. And so I like that approach. It's like, don't ever get down on yourself that you weren't good enough or you didn't get, you were
Yeah.
rejected. It's just like you weren't the one they selected that day and that's okay, right? How do you kind of combat with it? Because it really is an industry kind of built on selection or
Yeah.
rejection. So how do you
One
deal with that?
Yeah, definitely that. It's very much, it's like, it's an industry where you can get rejected because you have the wrong color hair or you're the
Right.
wrong like height. It's like, it's one of the only industries in the world where you can get rejected from a job because your hands are weird or something, like You just like so about how you look. Like it is, and it's not discrimination because it's, you're trying to create an art piece.
Right.
But yeah, it's like I guess I've just dealt with it so much that it's I don't know, I've become like numb to it. I mean, of course there are those auditions that you get where you're like, I would be perfect for this role. I could play this tomorrow. Like I know that like they would be stupid if they didn't hire me, and then it turns out, a couple weeks later they are stupid. They didn't hire you,
Yeah, yeah.
And you definitely do get attached sometimes, and there's moments where you're like, dang, like I really, oh, like that really sucks. But for the most part, I think like the majority of auditions that you get as an actor are ones where you're just like, oh well, take it or
Yeah.
leave it. Like especially if you're a working actor like me, like you get mostly commercial auditions. That's like especially if you're like in the comedy, even like comedy adjacent, if you
Right.
have the ability to like improv or something, the commercial world loves you. And so for those, I'm just like sometimes I will audition for something and then like a week later they'll be like, they loved you, you booked it. And I'm like, what even was? I don't even remember that.
Well, yeah, because I mean, there's some stretches where you have so many that, yeah, I can imagine that
Yeah.
you don't recall what it was or stuff. And then there's the other side of it too. We have a buddy, Jason Warner Smith, and he talked about he auditioned and he thought he nailed it, and he was like, oh my, this was the best thing I've ever done, and
Yeah.
didn't get it. But turns out they loved him. They thought he nailed it too, just not for that. And they put him
Yeah.
in the drawer, and they specifically waited. And every time he would come in and audition for them, he wouldn't get it. And then there was the one character that they were waiting for him for, and then he got it. And they told him, we wanted you from day one. We were just waiting for the right one for you. And then he
Yeah.
landed The Walking Dead, and it just boom. So
Yeah.
those stories are good too. And I feel like if you approach it that way, you just got to remember maybe you did do great and you were the best. And they're just like, it's
Yeah.
just not for this. But man, do we remember that person? And we're going to remember when we're going to cast this, so you just got to kind of stay positive with it all. And I think that's great. Which brings me to, I love too that you did, speaking of your stand-up comedy, the Almost Therapy. I thought this was like huge because we have another podcast too that we do called Everything's Okay, and it's mental health based because mental
Oh,
health is really
cool.
important to us. And so I love the idea that you're doing this stand-up sketch and comedy and then Q&A with a therapist. I was like, wait, what? This is incredible because I feel like, especially in this industry, mental health, huge. So talk about that a little bit. Is it really important to you too? And where did this idea come from? Because I think this is a fantastic idea.
Thank you. Yeah, that really, I mean, it was born from like my friend and I, we both kind of got into comedy at the same time. And we were like, we need to get on shows because these open mics really suck. And the best way to get on shows is to have your own show that other comedians can get on and like you can trade time to get on their shows.
Right.
Like
Yeah, no.
that's kind of how it works. And so we were like, well, we have to have a show. And it's actually it's pretty easy to put one on in New York. There's tons of performance space, if you've got, I mean, you won't make any money, certainly, but if you've got the time, there's a lot of places where you can, there's a lot of bars who will be like, yeah, you can use our place for free. You just like we make money on drinks and then you don't
Sure.
make
Yeah,
make money.
and you don't, but hey.
But yeah, but you get stage time. You get your
Exactly.
name out there. And so that's what we did. We were like, we wanted to do a stand-up show, but we really wanted something that set us apart. And both of us had had our own personal run-ins with mental health, as you can imagine. And we were like, well, wouldn't it be cool if we did like we had like a variety show, which is like it's mostly stand up, but like, we had magicians, we had musicians, we had like burlesque drag, like we just had anyone on we thought was really cool. And at the end the audience could submit anonymous questions that would be answered by a therapist. And they're like real question or a mental health professional in some
Right.
way. And they're like, and we were like, you know, it's a comedy show. And a lot of people at comedy shows, like they want to be the funniest person in the audience. And we're like, we really wanted to make a space where people felt comfortable, like asking a real vulnerable, interesting question. And 9 times out of 10, they really did, which is like part of what made me so proud about that project was like we really cultivated a space where people like really wanted to engage genuinely with this mental health professional and like people I feel like learned something. I certainly learned a lot over the years of doing it and yeah, I mean, it just became something that was really, really important to us. And like for, you know, for certain stretches in our careers, it was like the best thing that was happening to us. It was
Yeah.
like the only thing that we had. And it was like, it really truly was like a labor of love. I say was because we're not currently putting it on right now. We had an issue with like one of our venues, you know, it fell through and we're on kind of an extended hiatus right now, but we're really hoping to put it back up. But yeah, we had a fair amount of success with that.
Yeah,
And
that's amazing.
cool.
First of all, thank you for doing that. I think it's so important to get it out there and provide those spaces for people to feel comfortable enough to talk. You know, it's one of the things that we talk about all the time with that's art provides that. Right?
Mhm.
You know, because you don't just normally sit down and say, let's talk about suicide or let's talk about anxiety. But if you're watching a movie or a TV show or a comedy show on stage and it brings it up in a way that you're talking about that at first, but then it transitions to having those conversations. I think that's the best way to do it. If you can entertain and inform and help, like, I mean,
Yeah.
that's the whole beauty of being an artist and being a creative is to put that out in the world and, do your little part, I guess, to make the world a better place. Right. And I just love that you did that. What a brilliant idea. I just, thank you.
Thanks.
And fingers crossed.
Thank you.
I hope it does come back for you guys. 'Cause I think that's just
Me too.
fantastic. Okay. My next question, because I think a lot of people transitioned into this thanks to COVID. Did the writing and the creating your own content kind of a thing come from that? And sometimes it comes from you're going stretches without getting any gigs and you're being told you're not right for this or you're not right for that. Okay, well, I'm going to write something for myself and put myself out there. Talk about how you kind of added the hyphens a little bit, making okay, let me be a writer or a producer or talk
Yeah.
about that a little bit.
Yeah. You answered it. I mean, it's like I never really self-identify as a writer because I can't just like sit down and just like write something. Number one, I have to like actually have an idea in my head, like pretty much almost completely start to finish. Like I
Yeah,
have to have, something that it makes me interested in it. And it's also like mainly out of self-preservation as a performer. Like I write very selfishly in that I write like for really mainly for myself.
sure.
Um, and like and it's like I can write for other people, especially if I know them well, but I'm not, um, I don't think I would consider myself like a writer, but I'm like a writer actor, which
Yeah.
I feel like honestly is a lot of people. A lot of very successful people just started writing stuff for themselves and
Oh, without
then
doubt. Yeah.
people liked it. But yeah, mostly out of self-preservation.
I love that though. And I got to tell you, you are not alone. Almost every writer I know tells me I'm not really a writer. And I'm like,
Yeah, I think
well,
that's
you kind of
pretty
are. When
common
you have like 35 credits, you kind of are.
in
But,
writing. Yeah.
I love that though. I think that's a self perfectionism type thing. It's you never feel good enough. It's only I'm only
Mhm.
doing this or I'm only doing that. But I think you're probably doing really well because it takes skill and talent to be able to do what you do. So I love that. All right. We have to jump in because this was huge. This movie,
Yeah.
when they first announced Saturday Night, I was like, oh, yeah, this is going to be good, right? Because there were so many stories over the years of what was going on behind the scenes on Saturday night. You know, the sometimes not so nice stuff and the heckness, like even getting. So the idea that they were gonna tell this story of the hours leading up to the opening night, I just found extremely fascinating. So I got super excited about it. Are you a fan of Saturday night, first of all? And is that why you were like, oh, I got to audition for this? Or how did the audition come about?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm definitely a fan of Saturday Night. I think anybody who's comedy adjacent, who does comedy, like, it's almost kind of a necessity of the job is like, it's so many like comedy institutions, like the UCB, the People's Improv Theater, like,
Yeah.
like the BCC, they kind of teach almost like all of them offer classes of like, oh, you got the SNL like tape, like we'll coach you, they offer like SNL class coaching and things like that. That's considered like part of the model.
Okay.
Definitely is like people come in and like uh that's the SNL model. That's considered like the peak of, I
Right.
don't know, of the institution. But um I mean, I wish I had the type of career where I can be like, I definitely want to audition for that and just like get the audition. But no, I just like any other thing, my representation, my manager sent me the audition. It was originally titled Wolverines. This was like early last year. It was just for a tape.
Yep.
And it was for the role of Valerie, which I ultimately ended up playing. And it was yeah, I mean it was very conventional. I sent in a tape and like, I don't know, a week or so later they wanted me in for a callback and it was an in-person callback in New York, which is like rare. A lot of times it's like, especially for something of this caliber, it's like multiple,
Right. Right.
it's like two Zoom callbacks and then like a maybe an in-person with the producer if you're lucky, like but no, this was like come on in and audition and at the casting office and Jason was there in the audition room.
Oh.
And yeah, it was crazy. Like they were also auditioning like literally like Anna Klumsky was like two people before me.
Oh,
Like they
wow.
were
Wow.
auditioning like, like pretty well-known people. In addition, they were just like, anybody.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he was just like in town and they wanted to do it. But yeah, I don't know. I did the sides. It was like one scene. I did the scene. I did it again, and then he was like, "Thanks so much." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, heard, absolutely." I very much thought. I was like, whatever. Like they don't know, they don't want me. Like they don't want, this is a big, huge thing. This is like a historic project, this is like a big caliber thing.
Yeah.
I left the room actually feeling very good about what I had done. I was like, look, because in the room I was like, there's no way I'm getting this. And so I just kind of
Just
I was
went.
very relaxed, weirdly. I was like,
Yeah.
kind of chill. Because I was like, this is a cool opportunity that will never happen to me. So yeah, so I was very relaxed, very chill, and then I left the room and weirdly, like this doesn't happen all the time. It's very rare that this happens where I left the room and I was like, actually, I feel pretty good about what I did.
Yeah.
I don't want to kill myself after that. Actually, that feels pretty good. I could do that again. And yeah, and then I didn't hear anything for months and months and months.
Of course.
Well, it was mainly because, and I fully thought I hadn't gotten the job because it was supposed to shoot last September, but then the
Right.
strike
Strikes
happened.
happen. Yeah.
And so they had to stop all pre-production and casting work. Like literally the whole thing came to a halt and September rolled through and I was like, well, maybe they shot it, probably not, who knows. And then that December, literally on my birthday, I got an email that wasn't a booking yet, but casting was like, "Are you available?" And I was like, "Yes."
That's great birthday
Oh,
present. It's like, yes, yes.
yes, I'm available. I'll
Yeah.
quit my job. I'll dye my hair. I don't know, whatever you need me to do. And then yeah, like that February, I got the call that that they booked me. I didn't have to come back in. I don't know.
Wow. Wow. I love hearing the process, and because it's always different. It's always a great story.
Always.
Um
Yeah.
so how did you approach it? Did you do a lot of research on Valerie, or so how did you go into that approach on, okay, this is who I'm
Yeah.
playing? Did you have to Google her and go, who is that? Or did you
Yeah.
know, or yeah. Yeah. So,
I mean, for the audition, there was like a small, so backstory on who Valerie is. Valerie Bromfield, wonderful comedian. I never met her before the filming. And then it wasn't until actually after it came out that she found my email and emailed me.
oh,
She is no longer in the industry. She's since retired. She like quit the industry in the early 2000s, and went back and got her psychology degree, and then taught at a university for many years, had her own private practice.
wow.
And then I think now retired, and we've been emailing back and forth,
How
which is so
awesome is that, right?
so cool. It's
Yeah.
amazing. I think it's also interesting that we have like, I don't know, like a little bit of in common of like the psychology / comedy thing,
Yeah.
which I had no idea before I even during the audition. I didn't know that she had also like become a psychologist. Um, but yeah, in the 70s, she was well known in that, like in the comedy community. She was on like, she helped write and she performed on like the Lily Tomlin specials. Which Lorne also produced. So she was like good friends with Lorne. She and Dan Aykroyd were comedy partners. They were a writer duo. They
Yep.
came up together, all through like Canada, and like one of the founding members of the Groundlings, I think it
Yeah,
was.
yeah.
Yeah, she was up there. Yeah, so she's like very important to that community. She and Lorraine Newman are still friends. They still call each other, you know.
Amazing.
Uh, yeah, so it's very cool. She's a pillar of the community. It was like it's unbelievable that I even got to play her. I don't look anything like her. But for the audition, at the top of the scene, you hear like a little bit of her set that she ultimately does on the pilot episode of SNL, which I think is worth watching. It's worth watching the whole pilot just to see
Oh,
like
for sure.
really how insane it is.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
wild. There's like not only there's not one but like two musical guests. Andy Kaufman does technically a musical set. They
Yep.
introduced him as a musical guest even though he wasn't. Um, the iconic Mighty Mouse thing. That's
Yes.
from the
Yeah.
pilot episode. And then yeah, so there was like the Not Ready for Primetime Players, which was the main cast, and then he brought on Andy, Valerie, and Billy Crystal to be featured players to do like a set, in between sketches. And Valerie made it on the show for 2 minutes,
Yep.
two whole
Yep.
minutes, and she does a set of characters, and that was like part of the set was part of the audition, which was later cut from the movie. And then there was just truly like 7 lines, I think, in that whole scene. But yeah, that was but yeah, before the audition, I had not heard of her. And the main thing I worked on for the audition was just her set.
Hmm.
And then once I booked it, that's when I started kind of researching into who she really was. Um, and it's awesome. She's so cool. She's one of those like more niche players. Like she obviously never made it super big.
Right. Right.
But I also don't think that she was ever really interested in fame or, being like prolific or anything like that. I think she always really liked, doing the writing stuff and like the behind the camera stuff, although she was an incredible performer. Yeah, she's worth a Google.
Yeah,
If
no doubt, no doubt.
yeah,
I
if
love everything about that. Like, first of all, there's usually only two reasons somebody would hunt you down and email you. It's either they hated what you did or loved
yeah.
what you did. So clearly, if you guys are still talking, she loved what you did. I mean, so
She did. She said like some of the nicest things like in her initial email. It was like so yeah, it like made me cry. I was like, oh
aw.
my, like I couldn't respond for a whole week. I was like, oh my God, I
Yeah,
couldn't
right.
believe
You had to
it.
process it. It's like, oh,
Yeah,
oh,
I was
oh,
like I was shocked that she, I mean, obviously I figured that she would watch the movie, but I
right,
just the
right.
fact that she would like find me and like say such wonderful, wonderful things.
That's
Like, so
that's amazing. So
like the
did she
coolest thing that's ever
share?
happened to me.
Oh, I bet. I would be telling everybody. Did she
Yeah.
share a little bit about that whole back and forth dynamic with Billy? Because to me, I thought that was a really interesting driving point in the film because
Hmm.
like you said, the not ready for prime time. You know that's happening. But the
Yeah.
feature, you're like, oh my gosh, who are they gonna make it? Are they not? And the whole time,
Yeah.
I'm sure most people are thinking, well, no way Billy's not getting on. No way Billy's not getting on. So did she share a little bit of that with you? And is that because I've seen, and maybe we could talk about this a little bit too.
Yeah.
Some of the original cast members are saying, oh, that's pretty spot on. And a couple other ones are like, yeah, maybe this was like this and maybe it wasn't, kind of a thing. So did you get a little insight in that? Was it like, because that had to be
Well,
harbcore. Her and Billy were so friendly. And then all of a sudden she's like, you're on. See ya. Like, I mean,
well, so there's a lot in there that's like definitely true. I mean, a lot of it is, is fictionalized
sure,
drama.
sure.
And like obviously they wouldn't be rehearsing sketches for the first time like 40 minutes before it airs. Like they that would have already been done. Like
Yeah,
that's the point of the dress rehearsal anyway. Like all of that would have been done and they would be kind of getting ready.
yeah.
Like it was more to kind of add to the suspense and things like that. So I mean, she in her email, she was like, I don't really remember all that stuff, but that was crazy. And like all that stuff with Billy. And so, but Billy Crystal, he definitely remembers. And so, unfortunately, what happened between Billy and Valerie as portrayed in the movie was not actually very accurate to what really
Oh,
happened. I mean, in terms of the friendliness, I'm sure I'm sure everyone was like having a blast and
sure.
like being like, I can't believe we're all here. This is crazy. Especially like a major network doing taking a chance on like a variety show of like alternative comedy. At the
Without
time,
doubt.
not mainstream comedy. It
And
was all
pissing
like
off their biggest star on the network at that time
literally.
with Johnny
Yeah,
Carson,
truly.
right? That's a huge risk. Like, yeah.
Yes, literally. And so I'm sure the energy was like very similar to what it was portrayed in the movie, but in terms of like what happened between Valerie and Billy, it was very different. In real life, I mean, do you want to know the real story?
Sure.
What happened? So, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the movie and also have not watched the pilot of SNL, Billy Crystal does not appear on the pilot episode of SNL, although he later joins the cast and then later comes back and hosts when, of course, he becomes like a household name.
Right.
But in the pilot, he never made it on. And the reason was, the real reason is like kind of more boring, which is why I feel like they dramatized it. So it was just like during the dress rehearsal, uh, he was kind of complaining to his agents that he wasn't getting enough time. He's like, 5 minutes isn't enough time for my whole set. And so his agents complained to Lorne and was like, you're not featuring him enough. He's a star, blah, blah, blah. And then Lorne was like, you want more time? I'll give you all the time in the world. You're off the show. And so, yeah, so
Yeah.
that's what really, it was an agent's thing. It was,
Sure.
it was industry politics, unfortunately. Although I don't think there was like, uh,
Any animosity towards it. Yeah.
any
Yeah.
real animosity, there's a lot riding on this, and so it was just like you're either in or you're out. I don't know what to tell you. And that was pretty similar. It was like I have 2 minutes that I need filled, or I have a very limited amount of time. It's
Right.
either take what you can get or you leave,
Right.
and that's ultimately what ended up happening. But yeah, it wasn't really kind of between the two of them.
Right. Right. Right.
He wanted but all three of them on. Obviously, he wanted to feature them all, but it
Just
couldn't
couldn't happen. Well,
happen.
I love the real behind the scenes scoop. Now we know the story. I love that.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So we know kind of like what the set for SNL was and what was going on that night and how what was the set like on Saturday night? What was it like working on? I'm guessing
Oh my gosh.
probably your biggest production at this point, like as far as a
Yeah.
film goes. Yeah. So what?
I don't know if anything like I don't know. We'll see what happens with my career, but I don't know. It certainly like has not been matched in my career so far, but like the scale of what we were seeing was unbelievable. So basically all the exteriors were shot in New York, like, you know, at 30 Rock, but
Sure.
then the interiors, everything was done on a soundstage in Trilith,
Okay.
in Trilith Studios, where they shoot all like the Marvel
Yep.
DC stuff
Yep.
in Georgia. And so, yeah, it was like, and so they meticulously recreated Studio 8H within a soundstage. I mean, down to like the cigarette stains,
Yeah.
or like
Wow.
down to like the yellowed wallpaper and like the 70 and the carpeting everywhere. I mean, it really is like they went all out on this thing. And the set, like as you see it in the movie, like you can follow people from the soundstage through the hallways, up the stairs, past the offices, into Lauren's office and all that stuff. That is real. Like that's, you know, that's not special effects. It was two
Incredible.
floors. It was an incredible set. It was so cool. And like in terms of like being with everybody and shooting this thing, it was honestly one of the best set experiences I've ever had, hands down. Like um everyone was having a blast, and I really think intentionally Jason wanted to create the idea of the ensemble. He really wanted everybody to get to know each other and be friendly and have good chemistry and like make something that they believe in just as much as he did. And I think he like, which was ultimately the energy that like that
Sure.
he believes kind of went into SNL. And I think he did a masterful job of creating that vibe on set. And so like what you watch on screen like is portrayed as like a bunch of kids having the time of their life, and that's exactly what it was. It was
Yeah.
just a bunch of
I.
people, a bunch of actors who like honestly I got along really well with everybody. Everyone got along, and it was like we were all having a time of our lives. It was awesome.
I love that because well done, and well done to Jason, because it does come across that way. The
Yeah.
chemistry is there. You believe these people are a group of people who have been hanging out and having fun for a long time, right?
Yeah.
So I think it did translate really well on screen, and I'm glad to hear that. And I also like how Jason was very smart in who he chose. Because, you know, the not ready for primetime players, most of them were not known people at that point,
Yeah.
you know, kind of thing. So I like the idea when he cast this film that you know who that is. I've seen that person, but I'm not quite sure who it is. Kind of, I thought it
Yeah.
was brilliant to pick actors who you know, like you've seen them, but you're not quite sure who they are, kind of a thing. And
Yeah.
because it represents what that was, and so to do that instead of just lacing it with huge A-listers all over the place, right? I thought
Yeah.
that was a brilliant move. Not that they're not A-listers. I'm just saying they're.
No, no,
You,
absolutely. They would agree. I mean, he cast specifically, like there are definitely a few definitely recognizable faces
right,
in there,
right.
but they're kind of peppered throughout, and the majority of the people that you see on screen are, you know, like are actors who are working actors
Yep.
who are in varying degrees of success in their career, which is exactly what which is exactly what they were. He cast like people who are in, you know, times in their career
Yes.
that were similar to the actors that they are portraying, which I think was really smart. And it
Yeah.
also allows us, it also just like whenever you recognize a person on screen, you're always like, oh, it's like, oh, Nicole Kidman did a great job in that
Right.
movie. And
Exactly.
you're not really seeing the person that they're portraying.
Yep.
Like, although I love Nicole Kidman, it's just she's so recognizable. It's like
Yeah.
impossible not to see that as Nicole Kidman. And so it's really cool to watch a movie where you don't recognize all the faces, and so you can really see them as like, yeah, that's Billy Crystal, or
Yep.
could be, you know, how do
Yep.
I know there wasn't a time machine involved? Like that's that person. Absolutely. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
great.
I love. So I got to tell you, I think You said you're not sure where it's gonna go or if you'll. Yeah, I think you're going. I think you're gonna see things. I think just because you light up, you're very passionate about when you're talking
Thank
about it,
you.
and you can tell the excitement and the enthusiasm, and you nailed it. I mean, you were brilliant. I
Thanks.
always find like because you took the approach, I feel like, which many people do not, and I think that's what hinders them. There's no such thing as a small role. You're like, I got 7 lines, I'm gonna fucking kill it in these 7 lines,
Oh my
right?
God. I was like, I felt like I was the biggest star.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. And so
I
that
knew that I
comes.
wasn't, obviously. Like, I was far from the star of the movie. But on set, I was like, I mean, I was like,
Yeah.
I'm the star of this film.
Well,
I
and
feel
and
like
it comes
this is
across
perfect.
that way. You lit up in the time that you were on the screen.
Oh,
So
thank you.
I think that
What?
you're probably gonna springboard a little bit. I think you're gonna do all right. And I just love. I gotta tell you, just the whole conversation. You can tell there's little moments when you're talking about certain. You just light up, and I'm like, yeah, she's got the passion. When
Oh,
she's got that little
thank
twinkle when she's talking about the comedy and the therapy. She's got that twinkle when she's talking about this Saturday night in the email, and like, yeah, I love that because the most successful people, you got to be passionate about it because it is a rough industry. If you don't have the passion, you're probably in trouble. So,
you.
well,
Yeah.
I love that. I love everything. This has been such a great conversation. You're a gem. You're a real gem to talk to.
Shut up.
All right, so we do this kind of fun thing. This is new for this season. Yeah, we're like our 7th year in now, which I can't even believe.
Wow.
But we're trying to do this little new thing or whatever. So we got a series of little things that we call popcorn questions that I'm gonna
Okay.
hit you with, and I'm real curious now because you've had such great stories. I'm like, Okay, so my first one is the funniest moment or most memorable moment that you've had on set. Specifically, probably, I'm sure there's one from Saturday night, but doesn't have to be. Can be anything.
God. Uh, this isn't from Saturday night, but I did have a chance. I was in a movie, a smaller movie, that Michael Ironside was also in.
Oh, cool.
I don't know if you're familiar.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was in that movie, and at the time, it was not much bigger. It was a much lower budget. Those were the words I was looking for. Anyway, and so with that, like, there's a lot more. You interact with people a lot more. Usually, like on a bigger set, like. He's a higher profile person. Like, he would kind of be kept sequestered,
Right,
because
right.
it's a lower budget. Like, there was really only one place where there was like food and coffee.
Exactly. There's only one crafty table, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, literally. And so he was kind of touring around set. Like, the producer was like taking him around, introducing him to like the gaffers and the grips and things like that. And then they introduce him to me, and I say hello, and then I don't know, I don't even remember what he was saying, but he was like joking with some people like across the room, and I was like kind of ribbing like one of the people on the crew, and I was like, hey, you, and because that's who I can't keep my mouth shut as a person. And then Mike Ironside looks at me and he goes like, hey, I have socks older than you. And I go, well, tell your socks I'm coming for them. And then he goes, and then he just looks at me, and then he turns away, and he's mid-conversation.
Yeah.
And I was like, am I gonna get fired?
That is fun. Okay, that's hilarious. First of all,
Yeah.
I love that you just shot back because for anybody who might not know who Michael Ironside is, look him up. But he's kind of an intimidating guy. So the fact that you just kind of fire back at him, because he's really known as kind of playing these bad, tough guys most of the time, right? And so I love the fact that you just fire back at him. That's fantastic.
This was a few years ago, and I hadn't really, before I worked with him, I didn't really know much about his. My brother was like more familiar with who he was than I was.
Yeah.
But he, to me, was just like kind of an old grandpa. And so I was like, you're not better than me. I don't know. That's like generally how I deal with my imposter syndrome, is like the pendulum swings the other way. I'm like, hey, screw you, guy. I'm better than you. What are you, famous? I don't care.
I love that. Okay. All right. So no, it's good. All right. I'm real curious about this one now. If you could live in a film or television show, which one would it be and why?
Oh my God. is it annoying to say Saturday night? I wanna
No,
go.
I mean, why
Oh
wouldn't
my
you want
God.
to
It
live
was
there,
like,
right? Like,
I want to go back. Like it was everyone at the premiere, everyone was like, okay, yeah, so when's the sequel? Like we all had so much fun with each other and like
sure.
it felt like such a truly it was like I don't know, like 6, 7 weeks of the movie. Like
Yeah.
normally a movie of that caliber, it would be like 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
But it was so short and everyone had such a great time. And we were like, when are we, yeah, when do we come back? Let's make the next one. So yeah, I want to go back. I
All
don't
right.
care.
Well, and
Not
you lit
necessarily
up
in the
when you were,
world,
oddly
but
enough, you lit up when you were talking about the carpet and the walls. And I'm like, she's got a 70s vibe. She totally is digging the 70s.
yeah,
I was
I
like,
do. I
that's,
love the 70s.
yeah,
I love the 70s aesthetic. I love like a bell bottom. I love like a pointy giant collar. I
sure.
love, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, okay. We'll see if we can't make that happen. We got to get you in some 70s stuff.
Yeah.
This is like a generic, everybody asks this question, but I'm always curious as to what the answer is because we've gotten some very interesting answers. If you could work with anyone, dead or alive, who would have it been or who would it be?
Oh my God, Dustin, these questions are so hard. Um, God, like everybody, I want to work with like so many people. I mean, right now, the first person coming to mind for me right now in this moment is Catherine Hahn. She's
Oh,
obviously very relevant, but like I've been a fan of hers since Step Brothers. Like
sure.
I've been like like a hardcore fan. I've always thought she was like so special and so funny and so smart and like I'm just so glad that she's finally getting like a role where she can really show off her range. I
Yeah,
mean like I don't know if you've seen any of Agatha,
I
but
have. Yeah.
it's like what she's doing is like so few actors would be like so afraid to do what she's doing, but also like not even be able to pull it off.
Right, right.
He's just like, it's so good.
You
Like,
said it. It's range, right?
yeah,
Because if you look at Agatha, she's totally in control, but then completely vulnerable, and like
yeah,
and like the yeah, what she was
yeah.
able to do in that role. Oof, good
And
choice.
she's really putting it into, it's a full body performance. Like, it's a theater performance, which I love because Agatha's so theatrical. Like, it's truly like, the first thing that came to mind was like Norma Desmond, Sunset Boulevard, like all the
Yes.
movements. Like it's so dramatic and
Yeah.
so and it's not like insane. Like you look at it and it's very grounded. And I think it's because she has a great sense of humor. And like I always love actors that you can tell just like personally have a good sense of humor.
Yep.
They always are able to like find the joy in every character and like find the humor in everything and be like ground their character in a sense of humor, which I feel like is always more interesting to watch. If
Yep.
that's like the more interesting person to me, than kind of playing it straight. I don't know,
Yeah,
but
yeah. No, I
yeah,
love that. I love that. All right, now it's here, I'm gonna smack you with the Barbara Walters yeah question.
yeah.
We go deep now. If you could go back and tell your 10-year-old self something, what would you tell her?
Oh, you're gonna be an actor. Start auditioning, idiot.
Get started
Start,
earlier, like yeah.
start early. Start earlier so that we could be better off. We could pay our rent a little bit easier. um,
I
yeah.
love that. I love that. That's a great ad. So some people get real deep with us, and you're just like, no, you're
No.
gonna be an actor. Get
No,
started. Like
this
that's.
is look at me. I cradle her head in my hands. And I'm like, look at me. Start early.
I love it. I love it. And the final one, and I think I have a pretty good idea of the answer. But are you happy so far with your career?
I don't really have a choice to be anything but happy with it. I mean, like, yes, yeah. I don't
Yeah.
know. It is what it is. I guess.
You're
Like,
having fun, right? Like
I'm
so.
having fun. I've gotten to do things I never thought I would have been able to do. Like, I thought I would just be like having my little comedy show and then going to work at my little day job every day. And I still do have the day job, but I'm able to do things that like I
Yeah.
never even would have dreamed of. So it's very cool.
Oh, I absolutely love that, and I have a feeling the day job will be disappearing soon. I'm just putting it out there, but in a good way, not a bad. I'm like, who's this? If she's fired, like not that way. No, yeah. Listen, this has been an absolute joy. This has been you're an absolute gem to talk to. I've had so much fun, and open invite. Obviously, anytime you want to come back on this one, even if you don't have anything to promote, just come back and shoot the shit. You're a great conversationalist. It's been fun, and the mental health one. I'd love to have you back on the mental health one too, and just kind of dive in and kind of go for that one too. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Oh my God, yeah.
So, I mean, obviously, it is the day and age of social media. So, where can everybody find you? Where can everybody follow you?
Yeah, I mean, you can follow me. You can Google my name. I'm out there. Instagram is like the place that I'm on the most for sure. So Corinstagramster is what I'm on. Just try and copy paste my name. Don't try to spell it.
It's an interesting name. I'll say that.
It's difficult. There's so many I's, and like there's lots of double letters, and everybody's like, where's it go? Just copy paste, save yourself some time. Just Google me, and my Instagram will probably come up anyway.
There you go. I love it. Well, we'll make sure. We're following you everywhere, so we'll make sure we get everybody going where they need to go. Again, thank you so much for coming on, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the night and the rest of the week, and just best of luck. I think we're going to be seeing a lot of you.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. All right, take care, and we'll be in touch soon, okay?
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.